It can be tough to understand what we are as living beings. For centuries, philosophers and scientists have tried to answer this fundamental question, but somehow a clear answer has always eluded us. Are we perhaps looking in the wrong places? But what if someone has already found a surprisingly simple answer? The Danish spiritual writer Martinus provided a fascinating analysis that goes beyond both the physical and the mental aspect of our being. His perspective not only explains what a living being is, but also reveals why this answer has been so hard to find. In this video, we'll explore Martinus' analysis that looks behind everything we are doing, behind our thoughts, behind our action, behind our very existence. At the center of this analysis is something that we all know intimately, yet can never quite grasp. That is what we call our I. Just when you might think this is going to be a complex philosophical speculation, you will discover that Martinus' explanation is remarkably simple. We'll look at his three basic principles that explain both what a living being is and why this answer has been hiding in plain sight all along. Before we dive into the details, I should mention that I have linked more information about Martinus in the description. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below and I'll be happy to answer them. So what is a living being? Martinus offers us an analysis of life that is both profound and surprisingly simple. He states that every living being can be broken down into three fundamental principles. It's the I, the ability to create, and the created. So let's look at this symbol. At the top we have this white triangle, which is a symbol for the I. In the middle we have the power to create. And at the bottom we have the created that we all know so well. But let's dig deeper into what each of these really means. So let's start with what we know best. That is the created, or the created part of the world. It is everything we can experience, the physical world around us, our bodies, our thoughts, our emotion, everything that moves, changes, begins and ends. All of these are part of the created world. But here is where it gets interesting. Look at any living being, a cat chasing a toy, a bird building a nest, or yourself planning your day. There's always some intention, some plan, some direction behind their action. Something is orchestrating this movement and change. But what is this? This is where Martinus makes a crucial observation. The created world cannot create itself. There has to be something beyond the created world doing the creating. This is where we discover the I and the ability to create. When you say, I did this or I want that, who is this I? It is not your body. Your body is part of the created world. It's not your thoughts. They come and go. The I is the eternal presence behind everything you experience and do. It's the source of direction in your life. But the I needs something else. It needs the ability to create. The I provides direction, but it needs the ability to manifest change in the created world. This is the second principle, the ability to create. It's what allows the eternal I to interact and influence the ever-changing created world. So a living being is this remarkable trinity, an eternal I that provides direction, working through the ability to create, to produce all the changes we experience in the created world. Every thought you have, every move you make, emerges from this threefold structure. But just when this all starts to make sense, a crucial question arises. How can we be sure this analysis is correct? How do we know these three principles are really the foundation of all life? Well, Martinus has a fascinating way to prove this. He shows what happens when you try to remove any of these principles. And that's what we're going to explore in the next section of this video. Now we come to a fascinating question. How can we be certain that these three principles, the I, the ability to create, and the created, are really the fundamental building blocks of all living beings. Martinus provides a proof by showing us what would happen if any one of these principles were missing. Let's start by imagining a world without the eye. What would happen? Without an eye to provide direction, there would be no source of intention, no initiator of change. We wouldn't just have a lifeless universe, we would have absolute nothingness where life exists today. Just think about it. Every action, every movement, every change we see in living beings stems from an eye setting a direction. Remove that, and the very foundation of life disappears. But what if we remove the ability to create instead? At first, this might seem less dramatic. After all, we still have the eye and the created world, right? But here's the crucial point. Without the ability to create, the eye would be eternally frozen in a way, unable to manifest any change in the created world. It would be like having a present without influence, an eternal witness that can never interact, a director that cannot change the music playing. Once again, we end up with nothingness where we see life today. And finally, if we remove the created world, surely the eye with its ability to create could just make a new one, right? But this reveals another profound insight. Creation requires something that can be changed. Without the created, without something that can be transformed, the ability to create becomes meaningless. The eye would have nothing to direct its creative powers towards. And once more, we arrive at nothingness. So the conclusion is, if we remove one of the principles, we would not have a living being. But here's where it gets even more interesting. In our everyday world, we will never find any of these principles in isolation. Where we find life, we will find all three principles working together in a unity. This interdependence of these three principles isn't just a philosophical curiosity. You can say it's a proof of a fundamental nature of living beings. And why is that? It is an analysis that shows the absolute minimum that is required to have a living being. But just when we think we grasp this elegant trinity of the living being, we encounter an even deeper mystery. So, why is this analysis so hard for us to find and understand in the first place? That is what we'll explore in the next section of this video. So now we come to the heart of the main answer in this video. Why has this simple analysis been so hard to discover and understand? The answer lies in the unique nature of the three principles, particularly the eye, but also the two other principles. We are perfectly familiar with the created world. We experience it constantly. The changing seasons, our aging bodies, our flowing thoughts. But what about the eye? Here's where things get interesting. The eye is not part of the created world. It is beyond or behind it. Martinus explains something pretty profound here. He states that the eye is unmanifested. If it were manifested, it would be something created. It would have a beginning, it would have an end, it would be something changing, it would be something that was part of the creating. And we have already established that it's the source behind the creation. It is not part of the creation itself. These two are analytically separated. But what does it mean to be unmanifested? This is where our normal ways of thinking starts to break down. The unmanifested eye has no boundaries in time or space. It is not bounded by birth or death. It's not limited by size or location. It's not big or small, not here or there, not loving or hateful. The only thing we can say about it is simply that it's something there is. We know the eye exists because we experience its effects constantly. Every decision you make, every intention you hold, every direction you set in your life, these are all stem from your eye. But here's the paradox. You have never seen your eye and you never will. You can't, because the eye is what's doing the seeing. It is a blind spot to us both physically and mentally, because it's behind the physical and it's behind our thoughts, the mental part of us. This brings us to why understanding living beings has been such a challenge for us. First, we have been looking in the wrong place. We have been searching for the I in the created part of the world. We know the brain research, right? People are trying to find our I in the brain, but it cannot be found here. It's impossible because, according to Martinus, the I is not part of the created world. So, as long as we keep looking for it in the movement, in the change, in the creation, we will not find it. Secondly, we are not used to thinking about something that's eternal or infinite. Something that's not created is eternal and infinite. I have made a couple of videos about that you can see in the description. But the issue here is that our minds are trained to understand things with a beginning and an end, something with boundaries and limits. The I has none of these, and it's quite difficult for us to understand it because we don't have the training or the experience to do it. But we can do it eventually. And finally, there's an unexpected twist to all this. The analysis is actually kind of too simple. We're used to complex explanations for profound mysteries and difficult questions, but sometimes the deepest truths are the simplest. So simple that we keep looking right past them in some way. Experienced and understood by looking at ourselves as living beings. We know we have this I, we have it in our language. We do something, I do something. We cannot use the language without having the I do something part. So, why is it so hard to understand what a living being is? Why is there so much discussion about it? Why is it such a mystery to us? This is because the answer lies beyond what we typically observe and experience. The trinity of the I, the ability to create, and the created world is both profoundly simple and deeply transformative. Martinus shows us that understanding life isn't about adding complexity, but about recognizing the eternal principles that have always existed. By shifting our perspective, we come closer to understanding not just what we are, but what life is, and maybe even more important, why life is. Finally, I'll just say thanks for watching this video. If you have any thoughts or questions, please leave a comment below. I'll be happy to answer. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more insights in this intriguing world picture by Martinus.